hope you're having a good day. Welcome to the Doug TenNapel channel. This is where the happy patriots are. As we consider, does the president have that right? Does he have the ability, and do judges have the ability to stop President Trump? So President Trump is claiming, yeah, I can cut off paying for DEI. I can stop paying for USAID. And then a judge comes in and says, yeah, well, we can stop you from exporting criminal aliens. Okay.
What is that in my backyard, man? Some animal back there. What is that? Oh, it's a woodchuck.
Okay, DEI. Anyways, there's a woodchuck, big old woodchuck in my backyard. Okay, back to DEI. Does a judge, here's the argument over the federal judges. And will Trump have victory? It depends on the Supreme Court.
Really, for the first 200 years of our country, we really didn't see any of this kind of stuff. This is a crisis of the 21st century, and specifically with liberal activist judges. In the first less than 100 days of President Trump's administration here, you've seen more injunctions than the 12 years between Obama's two terms and Joe Biden. So these judges are more than willing to play an outsized role beyond their Article III authority. So there's a few things that are happening. One is some legislation to say one single judge can't do this. Maybe you need a panel. That Senate Judiciary hearing that you heard, that you clipped up from last week, was Senator Grassley's legislation, which would say those district court judges really only have jurisdiction for the parties that are in front of them. I think broadly speaking, though, as these cases make their way up to the Supreme Court, President Trump is going to be successful because he's either operating as commander-in-chief with his Article II powers as the executive, or controlling the programming and personnel of the Article II branch. Unlike Joe Biden, who was trying to steamroll the Constitution by saying OSHA could force 100 million people to get a vaccine well beyond his authority. Really what President Trump's trying to do is actually rein in the power of the administrative state. So I think he's going to be successful.
So that's a principle where Trump could win just because he's doing something different than what Biden was doing. Biden was trying to mow over top of the Constitution. And Trump is actually trying to limit the overreach of an executive state. He's trying to have everyone go back in their corners. I think Justice Roberts could actually lean in Trump's direction for those reasons, because he tends to like that separation of powers more. I don't think he likes the idea of a judge mowing all over Trump. Now here's Turley saying why he believes this is all going to the Supreme Court.
When Biden came in and wiped out all of the Trump executive orders, I don't remember all of these injunctions coming up because they didn't occur. And
that's because the right does not perform injunctions against Biden, the left, as a form of retaliation. That's what the left does.
And these judges are really following Oscar Wilde's rule that the only way to be rid of temptation is to yield to it. And they have been issuing these national injunctions. Even liberal justices like Justice Kagan have said this is insane. And what's interesting is that Roberts has said this, they've all said this in oral argument. In my view, part of the problem is that Roberts often believes that people will come to the right decision over time. And so they have said for years, stop the national injunctions, and it hasn't worked.
It hasn't worked because he's dealing with Democrats, and Democrats will not over time come to the right decision. Again, this is Justice Roberts, I think, just in giving Democrats that benefit of the doubt, I don't think they've earned it.
And so now Congress is going to have to step in. I think it would be a good thing to tweak the language for injunctions and possibly limit the ability of national injunctions. I personally would like to see, there'll be some cases where a national injunction may be appropriate depending on the case. If you've got a class action, I'm not too sure how we would handle that. But I would like to see, at a minimum, any class action have to go through a separate 3-judge panel with very narrow conditions under which a national injunction can be held.
Now, that's the second person to advocate for that the injunction should go through a 3-person panel. I don't trust the 3-person panel either, but they're trying to protect the right to perform an injunction on a class action lawsuit, which does tend to jump into other states and outside of that judge's jurisdiction.
I would also like to see Congress collapse the time for appeal. The problem that we've seen, and again, I really am sympathetic with the president on this, is that they issue a TRO, which some courts do not believe is appealable. That goes for 2 weeks, then it converts into a PI. And then you pretty much have a green light to go and appeal.
The TRO, that's the restraining order they're talking about, that the judges tried to launch against Trump. And that took 2 weeks for that to sit there before Trump was able to go to an appeal. And 2 weeks is too long to wait when you're the president, when you have 600 judges trying to launch 147 injunctions against every single thing that you try to do.
The problem is that 2 weeks is a heck of a long time if a president believes that there's a national security problem here. And I think that Congress can help by collapsing that period, allowing for immediate appeals to really speed this along.
Okay, well, I hate when people will not recognize that they're dealing with a political party, a politicized system. And so they just ignore, they keep pretending like Democrats are honest players in this, and they're not. This is bias. They do not agree with the same rule of law. They do not agree with the same institutions. That's not why they're there. That's not their criteria for appointing their judges. And that's why about, I would say, 30 to 40% of our legal institutions are corrupt by the Democrat judges that are just picked to get a preferred ends, pragmatism, ends justify any means. It means that they throw out the means to get their ends of make sure Trump loses. That's my opinion on it. Love to hear your opinion in the comments below. I'm Doug in Exile.